What is up, everyone? Thanks for jumping on to another episode of the Non-Standard Podcast. I am Manny Lampson, your host. Today is going to be pretty special because it's the first addition to the short versions of just questions and answers on everything leadership. My friend Will gets going right away in this episode, and he rapid fires tons of great questions. And I really like doing this because it helps with if you are just looking for specific questions to be answered on leadership, this is the content and this is the way I'm going to do it. So if you would like to submit questions, the best way is just to DM me on Instagram. Manny Mustache, super simple. Shoot me a DM and I will put together a list, and I will try to do this weekly on Wednesdays to drop them for your questions. Now, without further ado, let's get this started. And as always, if you learned something or you appreciated any question in here, the best way to help me continue to do this is to just share the episodes with people you care about. Leave good feedback, leave reviews, and just keep the trend going of becoming a better leader. All right, let's get going. All right, welcome everybody. Like I said in the intro, this is one of the first for the non-standard podcast of a Q&A format. So Will here has been reaching out to me on TikTok on just basic questions on leadership. Like, hey, what would I do here? What would I do there? And I was like, dude, those are amazing. And just like for those of you that follow Andy Farcella and his Real AF podcast, he has different episodes, different topics that he talks about. And I think this is the same thing. It's cool because we're not diving into a full episode on my leadership philosophy or leadership trait script that you guys see, but it's just some questions he has, and we'll try to cover them in depth. And then hopefully it leads to more discussion later on. And then when I have him on like a full episode, we'll be able to dive into that as well. But let's get this going, Will. If you got him, let's hear it.
All right. So, first question I have for you is, what is a good definition of accountability? Because I've been in organizations that they've used it, but it's been spread around like fairy dust, and it wasn't really clearly defined. So, what's a good definition that you would say?
Ooh, man, that is a very Air Force word, accountability, because it is never forward. If I were to think of holding myself accountable or people accountable, I think it boils down to the standards in the shop. Are the shop standards set clear enough to where if I tell you, hey, Will, I'm going to hold you accountable on this task today, it has to be something clearly defined. That is for sure. So it has to be either written down, I can judge you or grade you on, I can provide you feedback on, and it can be like recorded. That's the huge thing. A lot of times I think we use accountability as far as like accountability in partnership or accountability in teamwork, or like getting the job done. But usually there's never somebody there to keep you accountable because that person is just sending you on your way to the task. If I were to define accountability, it is someone giving somebody a task that is going to be judged or graded or provided feedback on later at a certain time. That'd probably be the clearest. But as I say, man, it's a good question though. What do you think? What do you think?
I mean, I always kind of took it, like you said, it's a very Air Forcey word. I kind of took it fell along the categories of responsibility and integrity. If you're doing the right thing when nobody's looking, you're being accountable for your actions. So if I do action A, consequence B is going to come out. So that's how I always thought of it. But like I said, it was it was not, like you said, clearly defined. It was kind of like, what are my personal preference, and that's the accountability. It's like that's good for your opinion, but the facts state different.
Yeah, I like how you talk about when nobody's there to watch you do the task, right? You're being held accountable, and I think that comes down to you still having to do a specific task to get done without somebody watching you. So that is a good way to sort of recage accountability on both of our answers. My answer was more of like, I'm setting you out to do something. I expect it to get done this way. And then you come back to me. Yours is, I was told to go do something. I'm going to go do it without somebody like watching me. And they are expecting me to do it a certain way, no matter who's around me, who's watching me. And then, like you said, there's consequences, right? Which comes with feedback, being graded or judged, yeah. But yeah, so it's good. An accountable task that is going to be done by somebody without a rope, to make sure you're doing it right, but integrity to go do it accordingly.
Yes, sir. So, okay, that was my softball pitch to get this thing rolling. Um, I'm going to go to a little bit harder question. What is more so you always talk about leadership traits, and the one I always hear is set the example, set the example,
Yes.
set the example. So my question is, because at least the Navy, their leadership principles set the examples like number 4. You have 3 more before that, and one of them is know yourself and seek to improve yourself. That's the first one. So my question is, what's more valuable, seeking to improve myself in an area I'm not so good at, or setting an example of an area that I absolutely am stellar at?
I'd say leading by example, because it is showing those around you you can do the job at hand, which is more important than learning how to do other things that are not the job, right? So I would say setting the example by leading by example at the task at hand. Doesn't have to be anything crazy or new or extreme or difficult, but if I expect you to go do a task, I should be leading by example by one, either I've done that task before in my past life, that you know about, or I can go out there and do it with you right next to you. So setting the example is leading by example, which is the most important, because people are going to do as they see, not as they're told. If I go tell you to go do this and you're like, I don't think he can do that, you're not going to do it as efficient as if you were to be like, I know he can do it, I saw him doing it. Or if you were to ask me to help you do it, I could go help you do it.
Okay, I
Yeah.
guess a caveat to that question is, what happens if that improvement is involved with whatever job or task that you're assigned? Like, hey, I don't know how to do this very well, but you like I said, set the example and show the guys underneath you that you are working to improve your skills. I mean, I would think the improving yourself is just a little bit more valuable in that instance, but that's just my opinion. Um,
Yeah, always be learning is always another one that falls right in there with that one, because I have to be able to show that I'm willing to try things I'm not capable of. But then again, I would never go tell somebody to go do something if I'm not expected to do it without like that knowledge up front, right? Like, let's say I'm going to go. If I ask you to take out the trash, I should be expected to take out the trash, leading by example. If I ask you to go exercise, I should be capable of going exercise. If I ask you to go, let's say your job is way different than like a flight commander. So in the Air Force, is weird. Sometimes a flight commander may not be able to do the job you are tasked to do as an airman. So, like for instance, when I was a flight commander of Airfield Aircrew Flight Equipment (AFE), I was in charge of them checking their crew's gear, making sure it's functionally good for them to fly with. But I couldn't do it. I wasn't certified to do it. I couldn't go back there and work with them. So how do I lead by example there? I lead by example in my own life, my own job, as far as being a flyer, being a leader. I do that, but then I can still show them I could learn to do other things as well. Maybe I go back there and I get hands on a little bit, or just stand there next to them while they do it, and that could be that. Whatever what was the first one you said it was? That first you said learning, sort of like always be learning. What was the
improvement, self
improvement? Yeah,
improvement.
self
Yeah.
improvement. There you go. Yeah. Um, I can't self improve unless I already have something I'm, like good at, I guess, right? To lead in. Um, so yeah, that's it. And now you said, what were those 4 things again from?
Um. So, so the Navy has leadership principles that they usually teach their officer candidates and midshipmen. There's like if I remember, there's 11 of them. I just remembered the first one, and the fourth one very well.
Okay.
Those were my favorite because it's like, yeah, I could lead by example. I could, and like you could have the type of personality where you go off and do your thing really well, but if you're not showing that you're willing to put time and effort into learning something else, how am I to expect the guy beneath me who's struggling at maybe the same thing or something different to do that task? He's like, hey, he's not giving up, so I shouldn't be giving up. So I guess it goes hand in hand.
They are very, very similar hand in hand, but yeah, I would expect somebody to do the task they know how to do great. and the ones they don't know how to do to at least get better on, I guess. So whatever you're trained at, that's leading by example. Whatever like below that, that's the self-improvement area. Like PT, right, could be a self-improvement one for some people, or it could be leading by example for other people. But
I mean, I get that T. When I was in high school, when I was 16, I was at my heaviest. I was 247 pounds. I got down to 165, and that was just asking questions, improving, spending time in the gym.
yeah,
And I made mistakes. I made bad workout plans. I plateaued. I gained some pounds, but I was always willing to work at it and try new things. Okay, this isn't working anymore. I need to try something else, and
yeah,
just keep on that journey. Um, so
nice.
um, okay. Another, like I said, you always talk about lead by example. What I always hear is, going to the gym. That's an easy one. I think, that everybody could hop on. But what's another lead by example that you could give out for? I mean, you could do it as a junior officer, or you could do it as an everyday Joe Blow human being. So, yeah.
Yeah, take care of yourself. Health and fitness wise is the easy one to lead by example in. The gym, what you put in your body, cutting back on certain things that are not good for you, right? I say alcohol because when I stopped drinking alcohol, it was a great way for me to lead by example in a career field that is pressured to and drinks a lot of alcohol. But there's that. So health and wellness, I think, is an easy one. And that could be very broad for some people, It's just getting outside their comfort zone there. Another one is, I think daily habits are a great way to lead by example. Showing up to work on time, showing up early, taking out the garbage when it's dirty. There's a good expression, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. That is huge. If my bathroom is dirty, I guarantee you there's something else in my life that is probably not as appropriate, right? So like if I give somebody a ride in my car, I hope my car is clean. So that's leading by example there. Having a cleanliness is a great way to lead by example because you're more proficient, you work better. Your work it's just better. Let's see. So health and wellness, cleanly, all like the daily life stuff, I think is a great way to lead by example because it's very skipped over in the big military scheme of life. So reading is a great way to lead by example. That ties in that self-improvement, always be learning. Like leading by example is also learning, like learning new things, learning a new trait. Doesn't have to be work related. It can be learning a new language because, I don't know, you want to learn a new language, or learning computer programming because it could be something beneficial in the future, So leading by example there. In the workplace, it's usually hard to lead by example because we're all, we all have the same skill level usually year round. So you have to find those extra areas to stand out.
Fair enough.
The way we look, the way we carry ourselves, our habits, our routine, those are easy ways to lead by example that I think they're not done very well in the normal workplace. And so like you don't have to dig real deep to lead by example. Just scratch the surface level of life and you'll be leading by example.
Okay. So this question is actually for me. This one was from a buddy of mine because I was working out with him last night. I was like, "Hey, you're former Air Force. What's a leadership question you want answered?" And he's like, "Well, I'm about." He just got through the fire academy. He's about to be a firefighter. He wanted to know how to give constructive criticism to a follower or a leader with a big ego, because he had some instances where there was a leader that like he was like, "Hey, I don't think this is gonna work," but their ego was like, "Oh yeah, it's gonna work," and then it fell flat on his face, and he's like, "Yeah, I kind of told you, but you didn't listen." So I want to hear your opinion because you probably experienced that before as well.
Yeah, there's a great saying out there. It says praise in public, criticize in private, right? So if the best way to give feedback, criticize, one is going to be in private. Hopefully that checks already the ego at the door, right? There's nobody around to hear that person get criticized. They're not going to be defending themselves. So that should already set the stage pretty well. Obviously that person is going to be sort of caught off guard right away when you go, "Hey, let's go talk over here." Defense, so it's already like brewing in their mind. But there's also ways to criticize as far as give praise to, like there's that sandwich effect, right? Like, "Hey, you're doing a great job. I noticed you did this. Here's what I would do. Maybe we can try this. And then next time we can do that." Okay, that can work too. This book I just read right here, the the coaching habit, say less and ask more, it actually has 7 questions you can ask, and I have it tabbed. You can always obviously start with a question that says, what's on your mind, to get them talking, because the more they talk, the more they're going to answer, the more you listen. And then you can follow up with, and what else, to get them open up a little bit more. Then it says, what's the real challenge here for you? You're getting them to answer the question. That's huge as well. And then it could be, what do you want? How can I help? If you're saying yes to this, what are you saying no to? So these are just different ways to ask questions, to get feedback or give feedback. Because one thing I think that happens a lot when we give feedback is the person giving feedback talks way too much. So they're not hearing how the other person would do it. So public would be the best one. Start off with a compliment, which is really easy. Ask them what they would do to do it better. Let their guard down. And then probably just talk about other things in general, to where it's not just focus on that one thing. Maybe you're just like, hey, how's your day going? Okay, cool. Hey, like, it's been great working with you. Like, have more of a conversation. I think to keep it simple, those are 4 good steps. Private, start with a positive, get them talking, and then obviously talk about something that's like not the topic, but to keep them going. So, but ask them what they would do next time, because you're not going to fix what they just did. So telling them what they did right there is like, it's like throwing oil on water. You're just bringing up the past. But I bet you they sort of know it didn't go well. But like you're saying, like, you already know something's going to go bad, right? Is that what that was sort of like another thing you talked about?
It's like the juju was not good beforehand. It's like, this doesn't seem like it's gonna go right, and it didn't go right.
Yeah. So if you have that time beforehand, I would have them just run through it, tell them what they're planning. That way they can hear it, and then maybe you talk about, or you bring it up to them as you're going to lead it like that, and then it goes bad. Like, let's say, for instance, I know you're going to make a sandwich with the jelly on the outside and the bread on the middle, and I know it's not going to work. So instead of telling you, hey, don't do this, it's going to be a horrible sandwich, it's super sticky, I'm going to make a sandwich for you like that before. You're going to look at it and go, oh, man, that doesn't look good. You should make it like this. Oh, I should, huh? Okay. Then it's their idea that they fixed it before it started. Little bit, that's definitely a little deeper right there, where maybe you may not have the time to do it right on the spot. But if you're planning something out, like a day or scheduling something, and the guy in charge is like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do it like this. And you're like, well, I just don't think it's going to work like that. Pitch it to them like that and see what they say. And then maybe they'll catch it, like, oh, yeah, that doesn't really make sense. But telling them they're wrong is obviously a huge defense mechanism. And then telling them you have a better way, all these little things can tie into it. So that's a good question, though.
Yes, sir. Okay, another one is so you probably heard the term Monday morning quarterbackers.
Yeah.
So you're out doing your thing and something goes wrong, or it turned out okay, but it wasn't exactly how you planned, and the Monday morning quarterbacker comes is like, oh, well, if I was doing this, I would have done it this way. Hindsight 2020, everybody knows that.
Yeah.
So how does a leader / follower deal with the Monday morning quarterbackers?
Yeah, and that's always hard, because usually those Monday morning quarterbackers are going to be the person above you. So you can't obviously tell them, like, be quiet, because they're probably going to be your supervisor or boss, where you're just trying to soak it in to listen. I would want to say, hopefully we don't have those people in the office that are Monday morning quarterbacking just to say it, right, to prove a point. Because that's already like too late, too far down the road. But if I know I'm going to walk in Monday and my supervisor is going to be there, and I did something wrong, and he's just ready to, like, tell me what was wrong about it, what he would have done to, like, press his ego button, that's the time where I'm going to pick my battle. I'm going to sit there. I'm going to say, yes, sir. Next time we'll do it like that. Do you have any other feedback or something? Because I've also read in books and learned there's time to pick your battles on arguments, to save your breath and move on, especially if that person is already, like, lost, right? Monday morning quarterbacks are usually already lost. So, like, that's like a deeper road you need to go down to help that person. So I would take my ego, leave it at the door, be like, okay, get ready, here we go. And then they're going to tell me what they would have done, blah, blah, blah. Okay, yes, sir, got it. I'll note it down. We won't do it like that next time. Or, hey, next time we do this, sir, can you come and like brief this to us so we don't have this happen again? And maybe that gets them involved a little bit more. But
Yes,
that's a
sir.
pick your battle time where I'll just sit there and, okay, cool.
Yeah, you just gotta take it. It's like, okay, I'll
Yeah.
remember that for next time. Um, okay. So this one might go a little bit deeper. Because when I think about leaders, like I think of like, yeah, kind of when we were going back to accountability, you were talking about standards, you're talking about, following things by the rules. Yeah, the rules are there for a reason. But I've always like I wasn't a firm believer when I was first starting out my leadership journey that there's exceptions to the rule, but as I got more experienced and more situations thrown at me, there is a lot of gray area and not just all black and white. So when does a leader need to look beyond the book for his team?
That's what's going to make a leader. If they can do the things that are going to get them in trouble to get the job done. Obviously, if it's not like dangerous or like unsafe, things like that. But if they know their upper management might not like the way they did it, but the job got done right, I think those are the leaders that are rare. They can take a spear for the team to get the job done right. But your question was how do we know, right? Like how do we know when to take that spear per
Yeah.
se? If it's for the team, it's for the team. Like leaders have to be able to sacrifice some of that to help the team get the job done. I've seen some great leaders where, like we were doing things to get the job done, which we know wasn't like the maybe like at the set standards by the big boss, and so we knew our boss was going to take some slack because they were doing different. The job got done for us, and it made it easier for us. Then there were those who were like, "Hey, we have to do it like this. We can't do it like that because this person said." Then we're like, "Bro, come on, like, you're not gonna like go to bat for us, right?" There's that saying right there. Like we use this term "take a spear" a lot in the flying community because we're used to getting spears. So like when we debrief or we get in trouble, we call it taking a spear. Like we own up to our mistakes, we own up to our feedback because we're taking spears. That's just I think that's what makes aviators really good leaders is we're really used to getting in trouble and taking spears. And so when we have to go to bat for someone or we get in trouble, we can just take it a little bit better. But I think that makes a great leader is taking spears for their people. Like maybe they're there later to get the job done so their team can leave earlier. Or maybe they're doing a little bit more on the side that the other team doesn't know about. Or they're talking to that boss to tell them like, no, we're going to do it like this because of this. And that's like a little repercussion. But in the long run, I think it pays out. But
I
those
mean,
are hard to find. Yeah.
when I was thinking of that question, I like the first person to pop into my mind was General Billy Mitchell. It's like that dude took a big spear, and now we have to thank him for the Air Force we have today. George Washington, that dude, the British were like, "You're definitely not following by the book of warfare," and he won. We're now a free country because of him not going by the book. Or, I mean, if I know you're religious, and I recently got into the religion, but like Christianity, Jesus did not go by the book. Made a lot of people mad. So like in my mind, like the leaders, like you said, the rare leaders are the ones that are like, let's look beyond what's written down and like let's actually look at the situation and pick the best outcome. Yeah, you could use the rules as a base, but you gotta be able to read beyond that. I had a retired gunnery sergeant tell me it's like, yeah, just because you read it in a book somewhere doesn't mean that the enemy doesn't read your book.
Yeah.
So you got to be able to look beyond that and not just think you're all that in a bag of chips because you read the manual. So
Yeah. And then obviously being able to defend it right and speak to it and go to bat for it is huge. You can't just be like, the book's wrong. We're going to do something different. But that's why there's another, like, every problem has a solution. So having the solution, I think, also helps too. So, yeah, there's some really good examples, though. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's like, was the was like you said, as long as like nobody gets hurt or killed, was anybody getting cheated out or anything? Like, is anybody getting put out? No. If there's no real issue, and it's more like, oh, it's just because it's not the original way, then, like you said, it's kind of like you got to mature in your leadership just a little bit more to
Yeah.
accept that.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I don't. And like you said, those are very rare leaders. I've known like two out of all the leaders I've had, like I could probably name off two, and that's
Yeah,
pretty much it.
and I don't think it's necessarily done at the lower level a lot. That's why, because the lower level usually are doing everything by the book, right? Because they're just easy to get the task done. I think it's only because it's really seen like those examples you said were like really really high levels, right? Like
Mhm.
big changes, big impacts, not small changes, small impacts. But yeah,
And I mean, like the two leaders I could think of is were '06 and '05.
yeah, yeah.
Were, like you said, they weren't Sergeant so and so. They
Mm-hmm.
weren't midshipman so and so. It was like they've been the '06 was in the Navy for 37 years, and then
Yeah,
the '05 was former Coast Guard, Merchant Marine Academy. Like he spent his whole life
yeah,
in the service of people. So it's like, yeah, I could get where they've seen enough to look beyond the book.
yeah.
So yeah, let's see what else I got written down. Otherwise, lead by example, definition of accountability. I don't know if this is appropriate. I actually kind of, like I was talking about faith earlier, and like I said, I'm new to it, and I know you're a believer. Um, how can I utilize my faith to
Yeah.
be a better leader?
That's a
Um,
tough one.
I know that's a tough one, and like I said, if it's not appropriate, we could scratch that from the record. But it's kind of like I, like I said, like as the more I read my Bible, the more I realize things I was doing wrong.
Yeah.
And it's like, dang, I was one of those guys throwing stones, and I shouldn't have been, because once the roles were reversed, I was wishing people weren't throwing stones. Still did. So
It's
I don't
hard
know.
because like religion is one of those ones they say not talk about in a workplace, right? Like
Yeah.
religion, politics, etc. Um, I've been in a workplace where I've been on both sides of it, where we've brought up religion to help motivate, and but then we've also couldn't talk about it because those around us just didn't. Um, I feel like you have to have the discussion though, like it has to be brought up, either to bring it up to be like I knew a flight commander that took over a flight and was like, "Hey guys, I'm religious. I believe in God heavily. I don't want to push him on you, but I reference like the Bible a lot, blah 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 blah." And to the people in the shop, it just came off very pushy. And so there's like a way to express it, like when I came in as a flight commander, I don't think I ever came in and was like, God is my right hand man. I will use him in every instance of the shop. Like if every decision I make, we will talk. I didn't say that, but I think they sort of. I'm trying to think like you have to. You can either be subtle about it, like have like a I don't know like a cross somewhere to where like somebody like knows it's there and important into you, but you're not like forcing it on them. But I think it has to be brought up because religion is so strong in leadership and the way we live our life. It can help. I think it can help so much more than not help. But it is a very sensitive subject.
Yeah. I mean, if it was 50 years ago, probably wouldn't be that hard, but it's just the time and age that we're in now.
Yeah, but
But
it's
then, we've had 50 years of good change as well. So,
yeah. Like I've had
um,
chaplains come into our shop, they give their spiel, and I definitely see it just go over the head of everybody because oh, it's chaplain, that's his job. I think a good way to bring it up is when we're building relationships with our airmen or our lower level people or just anybody to get no one on one. That's always a good question to ask. Hey, are you religious? And they say no, then you go, oh well, I am, and if you ever want to talk about it, like I'm there, like a quick little intro like that, so they know where you're coming from, and you already have that relationship with them. So like later on, if something goes on or something's rough in their life, and in the back of your mind, like, oh, they're not religious. Okay, well, maybe now's a good time where I talk to them. Then you meet somebody, you go, hey, you religious? And they go, yeah, I go to church every Sunday. Okay, cool. That's good. I can use that sometimes for motivation, like as I know a little bit about the Bible and not a lot, but um, I think it's a good way to build relationships too at a lower level because everybody understands religion. So you can already start a commonality with somebody, even if they don't believe it or they do. They know what religion is. So having that as a building block for relationships is a good way to talk about it.
And like like I said, in the Bible, like the only form of leadership, outside like government, like authoritarian and all that, the one form of leadership that is taught by Jesus is servant leadership when he washes his disciples' feet. It's like that is the kind of leader I want to be going into the service. Is like I want to be that service leader. If the guys need something, let me know. And I will move a mountain to make sure you could get your task or your job done, or make your life just a little bit better so you could accomplish the mission. So yeah, I didn't know if that was appropriate. I was just kind of curious because, like I said, as a junior officer, I want to build my leadership, and if I could use something I'm familiar with, it would be a lot better.
I think that is a great way to talk about your leadership philosophy. You know, like if one of your leadership philosophy traits is being a servant leader, just use that as a great example. Like I said, everybody understands at least that part of the Bible that Jesus was washing people's feet. You know, like they probably heard it somewhere in their life, so they can understand. Like, oh, I get where he gets that one from. That makes sense. You know, like.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Now, okay, so some of my leadership knowledge has come from friends who've been on the enlisted side of things. Shout out to Master Sergeant Stuart Burns, retired. He just graduated and he is down in Louisiana right now. But I spent a year. He was one of my running buddies, and I always asked him leadership questions. And seeing it from the enlisted side, especially being a Master Sergeant, he's seen a lot. I want to ask you some of the same questions, and the first one I'm going to ask you from an officer side of things is, what can I do as a JO to have a better work environment?
Ooh, work environment, huh?
Or working relationship, yeah.
Yeah. I think you have to have relationships. You have to get to know the people. I think relationships is the key because that'll drive a lot of the factors in your workplace. So understanding relationships as far as like who they are, what they do, what they like, what they don't like, what motivates them, what drives them, that'll help a workplace building relationships. It is very hard. And I think this is branch wise, but in the Air Force, it's maybe not branch wise, maybe just everywhere. From an officer to enlisted standpoint, it is hard for officers to get to know airmen because they think they're fraternizing or they're crossing a line. We're all human. Like, I don't care. I'm friends with airmen on social media. I'm friends that I have contacts in my phone. I have more mentors on the enlisted side than I do the officer side. That bridge has to be broke. As far as like you have to stay on this side to get to know each other. Like it's either got to be broke and everybody can get together, or it's like open and it's free. Because they're going to go to bat for you if they know you care for them. So yeah.
I was about to say, I mean, like you said, you have to break that branch. And one of the examples I've always heard, one's from, well, it was both the same saying, but it was from two different. One was a maintainer. He worked on the Growlers, and then another was a rescue swimmer, air crew on the Seahawks. And he's like, dude, if you ever have some free time as a JO and as a pilot, go down to the enlisted men's mess and actually eat with them so they can put a face to the name on the aircraft that they're working on or who they're going to be flying with. Because he was like, those were the best relationships I had, were the officers that came down to the enlisted men's mess and were like, hey, how's it going, Dave? How's it going, Joe? And like you said, break that barrier.
Yeah.
And even my dad had a good example. The CO would come down from the captain's mast, or excuse me, the bridge, and he would come down and eat in the enlisted man's mess, and the cooks never knew when he was going to show up, so they always cooked on the spot food every day. And those were the best 3 years of my dad's Navy career, was getting out in the Pacific, getting cooked the best food because they never knew when he was going to show up. So yeah, not Captain's Mast. You don't want to go to Captain's Mast. Captain's Mast bad.
So yeah, I think it's also a lost trait, that relationship, because you got to think back in the day when we were fighting World War I, Korea War, Vietnam, COs and brigade officers and XOs or whatever those terms were in the trenches with those people. They were on the front lines, building, so they had those relationships built, right? Without a war, we sort of lose, or that fight, we lose that relationship from the officers to enlisted because we don't have a common place where we're getting to know each other, like a battlefield per se. We're all now peacetime doing our jobs, like it's very split, you know, like, and so that's why I think I think, the one good thing about war is it brings a lot of people together, right? Like there is no rank sometimes on the front line or when you're at war because it's life or death. Like you're there to save your buddy next to you. So those relationships I think are are founded and bonded a lot solid at that level than they are now, because we're just sort of like doing the job. But that could be one reason why there's all these stories of people in World War I and Korea and Vietnam that have these relationships with the enlisted and officer, and then there's that huge rift where war wasn't in the trenches. It was like convoys, very split and fought from different areas.
Okay. Okay. Um. So, last question I have written down for you, but I still have a couple more. So, like I said, work environment for a jail. Being a captain and you've been in the Air Force for quite some time. What would you recommend a new JO doing, or somebody who's wanting to be an officer? Like, what would you recommend for them? Like, these are the steps to make you better once you're coming in or once you're in. So,
I think a great thing to do is not lead right away when you get somewhere. So sit back, let usually the experience, like senior NCOs, right, or the superintendents, that's what we call them in the Air Force, the flight chiefs. Let those people continue to lead the shop while you work with them to see how everything's ran. I think a lot of times for young new leaders, there's that mentality of getting in, making change, establishing the role of a leader, but you don't really know what you're leading. So like you're there telling people what to do, but you don't know what you're telling them what to do. And so one good tip is always don't expect to lead right when you get into a new spot. And then like we've already brought up the servant leadership, right?
yes, sir.
Understand you can be a follower and still be a leader before you're in a leadership role. Because I think all leaders have to be followers. I think that's like a prerequisite.
I would hope so.
If I were to say, like, you don't just become a leader, right? It's like,
it's not the Napoleonic War where you pay a certain amount and you get
yeah.
mission. It's like, oh yeah, that's not a thing anymore. You got to be a follower first.
But sometimes going through those schools where they make officers, they don't teach followership a lot because they're trying to teach leaders, and so they like lose that mindset of like, hey guys, I know you're all going to be good leaders when you get in there, but let's work on this a little bit. So I think that's sort of lost now with a lot of the new officers.
Okay. But it's kind of funny that you said like sit back and watch, because one of my friends told me, it's like, yeah, don't go to your unit thinking that it needs to be saved. This isn't a Hollywood movie. Not every unit's all disorganized and undisciplined. You gotta whip them into shape. Just sit back, listen to your chief or your master sergeant, and just see how things are ran, and then try to incorporate a little bit to that each time as your leadership grows. So
Yeah.
Okay, this is more of a personal question because I love hearing stories like this. But what is the biggest failure you've had to recover from?
Biggest failure. Let's see. I think I don't know. Like coming back from a DUI was pretty tough,
Ooh.
because it never really affected my career, but I was always nervous to talk about it. So that was the failure, being scared to talk about it until like last year. I told like my whole squadron, like we have this like resiliency day, and they're like, hey, we need you guys to tell stories about resiliency. And I was like, oh, I got one. And then my other buddy told another story about his resiliency that I had no idea about. And so we both told these stories to our whole squadron his first time, and everybody was like, whoa, like that's deep. So I think a failure is not acknowledging I failed, because I hid it for a long time. When I say hid it, like I just never really told people, right? Like it happened at a time in my life where it didn't really affect my career. I was in ROTC, I was in college, I was a reservist. So when I got it, my ROTC knew about it. They couldn't really do anything. My reserve commander knew about it, but they're like, "You were a student," so like I was very fortunate. Obviously, when I came up to my security clearance, I just told them what happened. It was on my record and all that, and so never hindered a lot. But then I was always nervous to talk about it after, so that was like a huge failure on my part to not use it to leadership. And I think another one of my failures, which is hard, it's it, it's a failure when I look back at it, but at the time I didn't know, is understanding leadership traits can change depending on where you're at. I was very focused on my first time being a flight commander on my specific way to lead is the right way. Like I was like, I'm going to get in the shop. We're going to do mandatory PT this many times a week. You're going to show up at this time. We're going to have meetings at this time. Like I, I just went in there with all of my ways to lead, and I didn't take in what other tools I had in my toolbox for the right ways to lead. So I look back as a failure, but I was learning though too. But huge failure there. I think also letting myself go to where I had to come to a point in my life where I had to lose a bunch of weight. I let myself get bigger. I drank more than I should have when I look back at it. And then, but again, I didn't think it was a failure until I look back and go, it was a failure because it took a lot off my career. It took a lot off me as being a father. It put me behind so much further than these 2 years where I've come not doing it, as far as like not drinking and living a better life. So yeah, those three, we'll leave it at that.
Fair enough. And speaking about failures, I believe I've texted you this question before.
Yeah.
Because I know, like, especially in the officer corps, it's very political. And unfortunately, with the politics, there's backstabbing. That's just how things are. How can a follower slash leader, um, what are you supposed to do when you feel like your leadership is setting you up for failure?
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, that was a good question. Ooh man, and this one, there were two ways you can answer it. There's one way. Oh man.
I know it's a deep question. That's why I'm
One of
saying
the ways was if
process.
your leadership is already setting you up for failure, they failed, right? So that's like the big picture, right? Like, oh, your leadership's already doing you wrong if they do that. Two, you look at it as, is it really, are you ever set up for failure? That's the other question. Like, I don't think so. I don't think we're ever set up for failure, because failure is, I think, always good, right? So in hindsight, there's nothing wrong with being set up for failure. Like, that's already, so like the saying alone being set up for failure is, I think, a wrong way to say it when I look back at it. Because to fail is to still grow. So I think it comes down to the person who is given the task. That is, it's probably because it's hard. I don't know if they're necessarily being set up for failure. They just know it's very hard and it's out of their comfort zone, and they've never done something like this before. So they automatically think it's a failure. In reality, I think if you were to sit back, look at the situation, not the failure, and be like, all right, he's either giving this to me, he needs me to step outside my comfort zone. He needs me to challenge myself, or she. They need me to do this to push myself. Like, that's, sometimes your commander will have that hindsight to where they're giving you a task that is outside your comfort zone, which you may think is a failure because they want you to push yourself like that. So that's like the good side of it. Now, if your commander doesn't know they're doing that and they give you this task not knowing you're incapable of it, so to you it's like a failure or a hard task, I would start asking tons of questions, like, to make sure you're on the right path to begin with. So like, hey sir, you want me to do this? I just want to make sure we're clear on this, right? So I don't make us look bad. You want me to do this, and then maybe they realize it and go, ooh, okay, let's change this a little bit. Or they're just like stubborn, like, that's exactly what I want you to do. Okay, what can I do next? So I think, like, with this being a leadership thing, I would take it as there's no failure task. It's just a chance to grow. Obviously, it's not what we're good at or what we're comfortable with, and so you got to take it. You got to take it as that. So from now on, when we hear this, we know it's not a chance to fail; it's a chance to grow and get uncomfortable.
And
Without answering the question directly.
Well, no, I mean, like, that's a tough question. It's a very
Yeah.
loaded question, and like you said at the very beginning, it's really dependent on your command and what the people are like above you. Are they, the weasels that are going to stab you in the back first chance that they get? It's going to fall underneath category 1. Are they people who are trying to help you grow, and like the repercussions to your reputation are just, hey, he failed, now he could learn? Then yeah, those are the people. Like, then it falls underneath category 2.
And I would say that percentage is it's most likely always going to be on the category 2. So let's say it's like 80-20. 80% of the time, that chance to fail is coming from somebody who knows it's going to challenge you. The other 20% is just because it's somebody that just has no idea. So that's like the percentage I would say of those fail situations. 80% good, 20% that person giving it to you doesn't know what's going on.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, that was a very loaded question.
Yeah, I remember because when you ask it, I was like, man, that's why I like doing these, because I could either give you the quick answer we always think, right? Someone gives you a chance to fail, what are you gonna do? Tell them no, I don't want to do it, or complain. Like, that's like the give me an answer right away. But if we step back, analyze the situation, really dig into that situation, it's a chance to grow, a chance to challenge yourself, and then obviously a chance to shine. Because if you do it, there's no fail, right? Like we said, if you're already put in a difficult chance and you don't succeed, that's sort of the expectation. So if you succeed, you double, like the outcome. So you have more chance to grow than, I guess, yeah. So.
All right. Well, I think we got like 2 minutes left, but thank you for having me on and talking with these questions. If I have any more, I'll definitely text you, and if we decide to do the full hour session, I'll try to come up with some more somewhere. I'll definitely.
Yeah, the good thing about the full hour one is I already have my script for that. So, like, for you,
nice.
It's easy. For my guests, that full hour one's easy. I tell them what we're going to talk about, what to bring ready, what book recommendation, and then we hit it. So that's why my normal podcast ones are pretty easy for people to follow. It's the same script. But I like doing the same script because then people listening know what we're going to talk about, and they can hear different perspectives on my leadership philosophy, the person's story, where they came from, and then they just get more tools and tips. But I definitely love the Q&A, and I think it's something. So I think I'm actually going to release this one probably next week already. So in between my weekly podcast episodes, drop the Q&As, because then people can be like, oh, like I'll just put in there like what questions we specifically cover, so they can go to that one and use that specific reference. But yeah.
All right. And I owe you a pair of wings once I get mine, so I'll definitely send those once I earn those.
Because you got my patch. No, wait. I did send my patch, right?
Yeah, you send your Phoenix patch and your wings, and I felt a little guilty because I only sent you one. You sent me 2. I'm like, okay,
dude,
that's motivation for me to go get my wings.
One of your patches is the only one I carry with me on my uniform at all times. I only have 3 patches that I keep in my pocket. The 14th ASOS patch that I want to go to when I become a tactical officer. Your patch for because I just loved your story about the religious part of it. It brings me there. And then I have the lost lieutenant one in the Army. That's like a very traditional patch that a really good friend of mine. So those are the only 3 patches I carry on me at all times. So yeah, I appreciated it.
Well, yeah, like I said, I got some motivation. Once I earn my wings, I will send you that patch.
Right.
So yeah, I want to thank you once again. We're at the 45-minute mark. I'm going to let you go. I got to get ready for my jet propulsion class. Yay. So I'll let you go. You have a wonderful day, sir.
Yeah, you too. And then, we'll keep in touch and do these again. Sounds good,
sir.
man.
All right. Have a wonderful day.